Hey. Things are starting to pop and we get to be live in person. And I am pleased to have Terry Rasmussen with us today. She is the president and CEO of Thrivent. And I think I'm going to use some Dave words here. Dave Royal is a diversified financial services company. And I was thinking Dave probably wanted the word diversified in there. Yeah. Yes, very diversified and a very big financial services company. And we are grateful because Trinity is a benefactor many times over of our Thrivent gift cards. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So welcome, Terry.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So Terry has been a member of Trinity for a pretty long while. Some of us know her kids. I knew probably the youngest of her kids, Camille. And we were talking today about where Camille is. And Camille is out in Pennsylvania right now. What is she up to?
Well, and first I have to say, because Kathy Thunheim's here, and Kathy is the reason why Camille and I joined Trinity all those many years ago. So I still remember that Sunday where we moved very quickly to join so Camille could start confirmation here. And Camille, she is in Pennsylvania. So last summer we moved her from Chicago to Philadelphia, and she's now at the University of Pennsylvania studying at the Wharton School of Business, getting her MBA. And for someone who was scared to death of numbers, she's conquered that fear, and so she's embracing finance in a big way and will be interning this summer in investment banking at Goldman Sachs in New York. So we'll probably end up having her live on the East Coast now for a couple of years.
Well, Terry, you, as I said, are the president, CEO of Thrivent. That is a big job, and a couple things about that. One is you are one of the few female CEOs in Fortune 500. I think the percentage was something like only 7%. So how did you get there?
Well, I'll have to step back. I remember when I joined Thrivent as their general counsel, and I was number 85, so the 85th female general counsel at a Fortune 500 company. And while at Thrivent, I was the general counsel for 10 years and really fell in love with Thrivent, everything that it has to do. In fact, I have very publicly said it's the coolest charter on the face of the planet because it's not only diversified financial services, but we really, lean into advice and generosity, and we help, make communities better. And it's a very fulfilling place to work. So after 10 years, my boss at the time asked if I was interested in running the core business. It was a pretty big leap because I've always self-identified as a lawyer and yet decided, well, why not? And so I did and fell in love with really running the core business. And then went through the CEO succession process with my previous boss retiring, and the board asked me to step up, so I did, and I've been doing that. My timing, I kind of question a little bit because it was November of 2018, and I had my first year, which you don't really know much about what you're doing, and then of course we launched right into COVID, and so it's been an interesting ride, but a rewarding one. I'm really proud of our workforce and how they've really rallied to the occasion and continued to serve our clients in a great way, but we've also continued to really come together as a workforce.
I find it interesting that, the first year of any job, you really don't know that much, right? But as a CEO, you're like, this is your first round of interviews, everybody wants to talk to you, and you're just like, okay, yes, I am the CEO. So that's just kind of interesting. The other thing is that you have led through COVID. Once you did get your first year in, now you're into COVID, and as we all know, our world sort of shut down. So how did you keep your world going?
That's a great question, and I recall very vividly that we were the senior leaders. We were in Scottsdale, Arizona, debuting our new brand. And Nikki Sorum, we were on the bus together going back to the airport, and she handed me her phone and she said, "You got to read this." And it was about flattening the curve. When we got to Phoenix, there was 1 case reported of COVID. When we left a couple of days later, there were 6. And all of a sudden, I looked at Nikki and I said, "Will you lead the task force on, our workforce? Because if we're going to flatten the curve, this isn't going to be a 2-week thing. This is going to be a little bit longer than that." So we formed 2 task forces right away, and within 3 weeks, we moved 7,000 people to work remotely. And the teams, we had one team that was really focused on making sure that we could continue to serve clients well, because if you recall, there was a little market volatility as well, and we know that we have to do a lot of hand-holding when that happens. And so we moved forms to DocuSign. We made sure that people were equipped with Zoom teams, so that they could work remotely and have that face-to-face, not physical face-to-face, but at least over Zoom contact. And then in our workforce, making sure that people had what they needed. And so if you think about it, we had people working out of their homes. They were working in, spare bedrooms, on kitchen tables, on, in the basement, some in closets. And so we wanted to make sure that they had the equipment. So we pushed a lot of computer monitors and laptops, and we then gave people money so they could go out and buy desks and chairs, and making sure that they could work physically comfortably at home. And then as parents, and I was sharing with Jerry, I said, John and I are empty nesters. That's a good place to be. I really became to appreciate the challenges that young families had during this time period. Because if you think about it, they were teaching their kids, they were working, they were balancing all of these things. And so we pushed, child care payments to make sure that they could get child care. We pushed learning, and tutoring and all sorts of programs just to make it a little bit easier for our workforce to manage. And as a result, I'm really amazed at the resilience of our workforce. They've come through it really well. I'm really proud of the fact that you hear about the Great Resignation. We have not experienced that. Because I think of the flexibility and our ability to really, connect and ask our workforce, what do you need from us?
That's pretty amazing. You talked a little bit about rebranding, and I think of anything that you've done, there's both a positive side to that, and there's not so positive side. And I think it's the same way with churches. It's the same way with a lot of things. So tell us about, it's a 100-year-old company. That's amazing. I'm trying to sort of wrap my head around a 100-year-old company, and going through the 1950s. The 50s is a totally different thing. You have, a lot of white guys running the company, and now you're in 2022, and our world has changed exponentially.
Yeah, so we're 122 years old. And it's I have been blessed. When I was the general counsel, I had led the effort of asking our membership on whether or not we should extend our common bond to include all Christians. And what was amazing to me going through that is just the attitude of abundance and generosity of our membership. And what I heard time and time again was, and I will affectionately call them the Lutheran grandmas, because over half of our clients are women, and a lot of them are Lutheran grandmas. But what they told me over and over again is, Terry, we love Thrivent. We want to leave the legacy of Thrivent to our kids and grandkids. And those kids and grandkids don't necessarily go to the Lutheran church anymore, so we want to make sure that you are available to them. And that was a wonderful gift that they gave us. And so now to connect that with the brand, the other thing that they tell me over and over again is make sure you keep Thrivent relevant for the next generation. and because we want you to reach and be relevant to that next generation. And so the brand, when we did that, it's a digital first brand. Our previous brand was paper only, and it's much more modern and hip. They even say, gee, I never thought you'd hear hip in the same sentence with Thrivent. But I said, to reach that next generation, we want to be, modern and hip. But there's also a very important lesson that one of my favorites says to me too. She says, Terry, you've got to do that. You've got to prepare for the future, but never forget who brought you to the dance. And so that's something that we take very seriously, to make sure that we're continuing to serve our existing clients well and acknowledging and just really thanking them, but then also preparing for the future.
And so some of that is changing the look of it. I think you talk about financial clarity. What is financial clarity?
Oh, that's another really good question. So we deliberately chose clarity because we think if our clients, if we can provide them the clarity, then that really frees them to lead a life full of meaning and gratitude. And so with us, what we know, and I had the privilege of interviewing, kind of being, the undercover boss and interviewing some clients about a month ago. And what strikes me is that our clients are just overwhelmingly generous. And, they come to the aid of others. When we say that money is a tool, not the goal, they live that. And it's really refreshing to hear. And so, in our case, it is, just really, appreciating and helping them find and discover what they have, what's important to them, helping, and we don't really have to help them discover their purpose because they're pretty purpose-driven already, but it's really helping them make those choices that are in line with their values so that they can lead a life full of meaning and gratitude. It's all about meaning and gratitude.
How many Thrivent people do we have here, Thrivent members? A few, yep. For sure. And do you like that part about the using money as a tool, not the goal? Yeah, agree with that. And I sort of feel that here, just at Trinity. And so you're saying that Thrivent provides that, giving back, but it also gives it back to the members. Tell us about how that works.
Yeah, so one of our second principles is around inspiring generosity, and I kind of smile at that one because we don't really need to inspire our clients' generosity. They're just generous. But we have programs at Thrivent. As a fraternal benefit society, we're really called to make sure that we're giving back and inspiring others to give back to their communities. And so we affectionately call them the ABCs. And A stands for action teams. And I think I had someone check, and I think you've had 13 action teams at Trinity this year. I think you had close to 80 last year. And action teams is really that small, episodic, that's where you get the gift cards, where we seed that. We give you t-shirts. We have over 7 million, Live Generously t-shirts out there now. It's been a great branding tool, especially at airports, because they're so comfortable. The secret that we did, which, is we said, let's give really nice t-shirts that people actually want to wear. And guess what? They really want to wear them. So it's great. But we have, pre-COVID, we were averaging about 150,000 action teams across the country. And it really does allow people to, get an idea and bring friends and family and make a difference in the community. And we've seen that over and over again. B stands for Thrivent Builds. We are still probably the longest partner with Habitat for Humanity. So I like to share with people, in 2008, 1 in 8 Habitat homes in the United States were built by Thrivent volunteers. And so it's pretty amazing. And I think over the course of our partnership, which now spans probably 16 years, We've through our membership donations and through our donations, we're probably looking at about $475 million that have gone to Habitat to really, go after substandard housing. The third is Thrivent Choice. And this is a program where you can direct our charitable dollars. And right now we have, about, I want to say 44,000 organizations in our catalog, a lot of them congregations. I'm very proud to say, Trinity here has benefited in excess of $107,000 of Thrivent Choice directions since the inception of the program. So again, it's a way where we can engage our membership and make sure that they can help us direct those dollars as well.
So those are all really neat tools, and that would make your company, I think, certainly stand out. How does the Lutheran roots, the Lutheran grandmas relate to, is it for all Christians now, or is it broader than that?
Yeah, it's our, as a fraternal benefit society, we do, one of the legal requirements is to have a common bond. And so our common bond is Christianity now. And so to purchase a life, health, or annuity product, you have to qualify for membership. Now, David runs our mutual fund complex. It's an award-winning mutual fund complex, and anyone can buy our mutual funds. And we have brokerage and a lot of the other diversified financial services as well. And so that's open to everyone.
Okay. Do we have questions? Don't worry, I still have a couple. So you're talking about COVID and leadership. Oh, good. What have you learned during COVID and your leadership?
Well, I started with, in my first year as CEO, I didn't know much, and I've pledged to, our workforce that I'll get better every year or every day. So. I think learning and not panicking, but, it's really focusing on, okay, what's the situation today? How do we address it? And having some principles around making decisions easier. So one of the principles we established early on in COVID is the health and safety of our workforce is one of our first priorities. And so if you have those principles, the decisions become much easier. But you have to make them, and you have to stay true with them. And not everyone agrees with them all the time, but you just have to align with that principle and say, no, if safety and the health and safety of our workforce is number one, no, we're not going to be going back into the office. No, if we are going to lean in masks a little bit longer than others, we're going to be flexible, because at the end of the day, everyone has their own unique circumstance, and that circumstance, we don't know if you're living with an immunocompromised person. We don't know, your home life, and I don't want to, when we didn't want to actually, jeopardize, people's health and safety.
Hi, I just had a quick question on more just balancing work life and, being a mom, and if there was a time in your career maybe where you kind of pulled back and kind of had to look at things differently, or maybe not take that next career move to prioritize differently, or how you balance that?
That's a good question. And this is where if you were to ask my kids, and I'll quote Amy Klobuchar a little bit here, because I love her phrase that she was a submarine mom. I kind of can relate to that. I wasn't a helicopter mom. And, yes, I did. I mean, I spent 15 years working for American Express, and, the question was, would you be willing to move to New York? And the answer was no. And so, I just really wasn't ready to do that. So that's probably the one time where I said no, although they certainly gave me opportunities, and it wasn't that important, in the long run for me to move to New York. The other thing, and excuse me, now I think, Anne, I must have caught this from you. No, The other thing I would say is your community matters. This is a wonderful community. So I was a working mom that, flew internationally a lot, so I was gone a lot. And the moms here, my very good friends, every fall when it's like, okay, who's the emergency contact for your kids? And I didn't have a relative in town here. Those moms would say, Terry, put our names down. If something happens, we'll pick up your kids. And it's just such an amazing community. And so it really does take a village. Now, with my kids, I still remember to this day, and Camille would probably be embarrassed if I really did share this story, but I do remember driving home from downtown at 7 o'clock one night. And here's poor Camille. She's, I don't know, in 3rd or 4th grade. They had a field trip. I didn't look at the calendar, and she didn't tell me she needed a lunch. And so here it is, my first voicemail. It's like, Mom, you forgot to pack my lunch. It's like 11 o'clock. We're getting on the bus. You forgot to pack my lunch. I'm like, oh, great. This is 7 o'clock at night now. So she's like home already. And so it was another 15 minutes. There's another voicemail. Mom, are you going to bring my lunch? And there were about 5 voicemails. And I'm like going, I am feeling like about a half an inch tall when I walk into the house. I feel so terrible. And, as it happened, because this is Orono, and of course I remember too, when I volunteered, as a parent, you always bring 2 lunches because inevitably somebody's going to forget their lunch. And of course someone had a lunch for her. And so she did get lunch, but it was like, those are the guilt moments where you go, oh. And, you just have to, it's like it happens and forgive yourself and say, it'll be okay. And I'm blessed. My kids, I couldn't have, 2 better kids. You've heard a little bit about Camille. I haven't said anything about Cullen. He's a doctor in Fargo. He's a hospitalist at Sanford, loves his job, is a really good doc. He's got, a big heart. And really does wonderful care with his patients, including his grandmother, who, my mom is 97, still living, and periodically she ends up in Sanford. And so she's very proud of the fact that she's got a grandson that can, marshal the troops up there, and she gets great care.
That's pretty awesome. Well, you haven't had the great resignation, and that must mean people are satisfied with their work, or at least enough to stay there. How have you helped people grow in their positions?
Well, it's I've said for many, many years that with the world changing as it is, you really need to keep your skills current. And it's giving people opportunities. It's asking people, I've always said, say yes, raise your hand. What's the worst that can happen? You learn something, and you may like it or you may not. And so it's making sure that, if there are things that happen, I would say COVID was a great example of that in the task forces, selecting Nikki to say, hey, can you lead this one? And we selected, someone else raised their hand and said, I'd be happy to help here. And then it was just a series of volunteers that said, hey, I think I can help. And as a result, they developed some incredible skills around, navigating and when the world is very uncertain and making decisions and critical thinking. And so all of those things, but you got to raise your hand, you got to step up and say yes.
All right.
So Bob reminded me you're from Fergus Falls. Is that right?
Yes.
Can you just share your kind of personal story about kind of why this is such a vocational calling for you with your parents? I've heard a little of that, but I'd love to be reminded this morning.
Yeah, so this is the step where I always tell parents in particular that if you have a child that's really struggling with what they're going to do as a vocation and they're not really sure what gifts God has given them, take heart, it can work out. So I'm a dental hygienist, CPA, lawyer, now CEO. And I was a middle child, grew up in West Central Minnesota on a farm. And my older sister was an artist. There was no doubt in anybody's mind the gifts that God had given her. Incredible. And she made a very successful career as an artist. And then my younger brother, he loved the farm and was very good at taking stuff apart and putting it back together, which is a critical skill if you want to be successful in farming. And then there was me in the middle, clueless. And so one day my dad came home from the dentist, who happened to be a friend of his, and they must have been talking and they were agonizing over what is she going to do. And so they decided I should be a dental hygienist. According to my dad, you know, they were always in demand, and you're never on call, it's good money, and you can always find a job. So sure enough, that's what I did. And it was then, when I was in school, that I discovered I really loved to learn. So much to my mother's dismay, I announced one day that I was going to go back and get my degree, my 4-year degree. And so my sister-in-law at the time, she was majoring in accounting, and of course she brought her books home, and I said, well, that sounds like fun. And we mapped out so I could get my 4-year degree in about 18 months, and then went on to law school, because I had decided I really liked learning. My mother was worried I was going to be a perpetual student at that point in time. But a little known fact, I mean, I went to law school so many years ago that I could clean teeth in the summer and over the breaks and actually pay for school. And so, which is what I did. And so from there, I went to the United States Department of Justice as a in the tax division as a trial lawyer. And at that time, my husband and I met in law school. We were married. He was living in Colorado Springs. I was living in Virginia. And fortunately, my docket was Colorado and Wyoming, so we did see each other occasionally. But we decided it would be nice if we could live together. So we picked Denver or Minneapolis. And we both got jobs in Minneapolis first, so we came back here in 1986. That's how old we are, and have been here ever since.
Morehead State and UND so go North Dakota and Minnesota. Thank you for being here today. I've really been interested and learned a lot about you and about Thrivent, and feel very fortunate to have you in our congregation as well.
Well, thank you, and you can thank Kathy.
Thank Kathy, and thanks David for hooking me up to the people who know you. All right.
Well, it's been a privilege, and you know, thank you to those Thrivent members. I hope we're serving you well. And for those of you who aren't, give us a look. So we're an incredible organization.
Really good job. You're clear and nice job.
Thank you.
Hi, Sarah.